Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about the topic of forgiveness. It's a word we hear all the time, right? Usually as this simple command, forgive and forget. But is it really that simple? What if that advice isn't just a little unhelpful? What if it's actually harmful? Okay, let's dive into this with a story that I think perfectly captures why this is so powerful. It's often attributed to Ernest Hemingway. A father in Madrid, his son has run away, so he places an ad in the local paper. It just says, Paco, meet me at Hotel Montana noon Tuesday, all is forgiven, Papa. The next day, a whole squadron of police had to be called to disperse the 800 young men named Paco who showed up. That story, wow, it says something really profound about us. See, at its heart, that story shows this deep, universal human desire we all have to be forgiven, to fix what's broken. But it also raises a really critical question, and that's what we're going to explore today. If this longing to be forgiven is so powerful and so common, does that mean we have a moral duty to always give it? To tackle that, here's our roadmap. First, we'll look at the cultural pressure that tells us we just have to forgive. Then, we're going to get into the dangers of something called toxic forgiveness and explore when not forgiving is actually the right call. And finally, we'll build a totally new model for what real, authentic forgiveness can look like. So, first up, let's talk about the idea of forgiveness that most of us probably grew up with. You know the one. In our culture, whether it's religious or secular, forgiveness is almost always presented as this absolute virtue. The story goes that it's something you do for yourself, right? It's a tool to get over your own pain, to let go of anger and resentment so you can move on. The focus is almost 100% on the person who was wronged and their own internal state. But this pressure to just get over it can be really, really damaging. It rushes a process that actually needs a lot of care. And that can lead to something experts call toxic forgiveness. So what exactly is toxic forgiveness? Well, it's basically when you forgive someone on the surface, maybe because you feel like you should or someone's telling you to, but you haven't actually dealt with the hurt. It's not about a real internal shift, it's about trying to keep the peace or just check a box. And when you put it side by side with genuine forgiveness, the difference is night and day. Toxic forgiveness is all about avoidance. It's a superficial act that rushes back to a fake normal and completely ignores accountability. Authentic forgiveness? That's the total opposite. It requires you to address the hurt head on. It's a real process that takes time, and crucially, it encourages the other person to take responsibility. And this distinction, it leads us to a really challenging, but I think vital idea. Sometimes the most virtuous, the most self-respecting choice you can make is to not forgive. And believe it or not, our modern obsession with forgiveness as this personal therapy tool is pretty new. The classical scholar David Constant points out that back in ancient Greece and Rome, they didn't really have our concept of forgiveness. For them, it just wasn't a mandatory step for two people to reconcile. They had other ways to fix things that didn't depend on the victim having some kind of internal change of heart. Building on that, philosopher Maggie Schneiderman makes a powerful case that withholding forgiveness can actually be a deeply moral act. When would that be? Well, if forgiving someone compromises your own self-respect, if it sends the message that what they did to you didn't really matter, or maybe it's just incompatible with the moral standards of your community. And this is a big one, when the person who hurt you is completely unapologetic and shows zero signs of changing, forgiving them can just enable them to cause more harm. So the crucial point here isn't about holding a grudge just for the sake of it. Not at all. It's about protecting your self-respect and upholding a sense of moral integrity. And that raises a really important question. If we're supposed to move past this simple pressure to just forgive, what does a healthy, authentic path actually look like? Thankfully, we're not left guessing. There are some really clear models for this. Instead of thinking of forgiveness as this one big, vague thing, we can break it down into a real process. Let's take a look at one. So Psychology Today lays out this really powerful three-step process. First, A is for acknowledge. You have to address the pattern of behavior, not just a one-off incident. Second, B is to begin to process, and to do it together. You explore the what, the why, and the how of what happened to build real empathy. And finally, C is for commit. Both people have to commit to making real, positive changes moving forward. You see what's happening here? This model shifts forgiveness from something you do alone in your head to something you do together. And this brings us to a pretty revolutionary idea, one that's used a lot in restorative justice. thinking of forgiveness not as a statement, but as a dialogue. Just think about the incredible strength in this quote. This is from a mother talking to the man who murdered her son at their very first meeting. She doesn't start with anger or accusation. She says, we need to lay a foundation. We need to get to know one another. She understood that real healing can't happen in a vacuum. It requires connection, even in the most unimaginable circumstances. This is the absolute core of what restorative justice experts call a dyadic dialogue, a conversation between two people, and it totally reframes forgiveness. It's not about one person just deciding to cancel a debt. It's an active, two-way process designed to rebalance a relationship that has been completely broken by what happened. And when this dialogue happens, something amazing can unfold. As people share their stories, a completely new perspective can emerge. This is what happened for a woman named Cassandra after she met the man who killed her boyfriend. She said, I recognized that Brett's mother had to live with the stigma. It made no sense to continue holding on to such anger. By understanding the ripple effects of the pain, her own anger transformed. It just wasn't necessary to carry it anymore.
So let's just put these two ideas side by side. The old view is all internal, right? The goal is just about the victim finding peace. It's a solo mission. But this new dialogue-based model is interpersonal. The goal is to actually rebalance the relationship itself. The process is a conversation, and the outcome isn't just a personal release. It's a shared resolution.
So where does all of this leave us? Well, it takes us way, way beyond that simple little phrase we started with, forgive and forget. It gives us a much richer, more honest way to think about harm and healing.
The key takeaway here is this. We need to replace that cultural pressure to forgive with the permission to engage in a real process, one that respects our dignity, that acknowledges how complex harm really is, and that prioritizes true restoration over some quick fix. Authentic forgiveness isn't an obligation you owe to anyone. It's a possibility that can grow out of a difficult and deeply personal journey.
This expanded view of forgiveness doesn't give us an easy answer. In fact, it does the opposite. It takes away the simple command, and instead, it leaves us with a much more powerful and thought-provoking question to carry forward with us. If forgiveness isn't an obligation you owe to other people, what new possibilities does that create for your own healing and your own self-respect? For more videos like that, subscribe to my YouTube channel and turn on the notification bell so you will be notified when we upload new videos in the future. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Bye.